everyone, and welcome to Rethinking The X-Files. I'm Elton McManus, and this is the podcast where we talk about the X-Files from the new season, Season 10. Joining me is a man I've spoken to many times, but not for a long time. Yeah. And he is Scott Copperman. Hello, Scott.
Hello, everybody. It's nice to be back in the rethinking sphere, rethinking more television.
Too right, yes. I've missed this.
Yes.
I've missed really diving into a TV program. It's been a long time that I've actually sat down and torn apart a TV show.
I agree, and it's been the same for me, but I think in a way it's almost been movies have kind of taken center stage for a part of the interim. I know it's been a while since we've done it, but Star Wars, Star Trek, there were a lot of big things. It's kind of taking a swing back now that Star Wars movies come out. Now I think we're going back to TV for a while. There'll be some new productions, things like this.
Yeah, definitely. Well, just to introduce people to us, do you want to say how we met? Across a
sure.
Open room, candlelit,
yes,
all that nonsense.
Well, we met a long time ago through the Simply Syndicated online community and decided to start the Apotheosis of a Bombast podcast, which is still out there at bombastpodcast.podbean.com and on iTunes. We did that for, I believe it was 3 years.
Yeah, something like that.
Then we also had an affinity for Lost. We produced the Rethinking Lost podcast together, which I think that was through the last 2 seasons of Lost, maybe 2.5. I think we started in the summer prior to the last 2. And we also did a number of things together with other Lost podcasters and appeared on different shows. And unfortunately, factors offline just made it harder for us to get together, mostly issues with my schedule. But I've been watching from a distance as you've been producing the Shonky Lab episodes, and I ship in my 2 cents via Twitter and Facebook and all every 6 weeks or so. But hopefully this could be the start of something more current and more frequent.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Well, I've been doing the Shonky Lab and the Black Dog podcast and the Witlist for the Defense podcast. And is there anything else I should be mentioning before I get slated by my co-hosts? I don't think so. I hope not anyway. Otherwise I'm going to get a kick in the balls by someone. But yeah, I've been doing that in the meantime. And I saw that the X-Files was coming back. They got the band back together. So I decided, hey, why not get the band back together and do a rethinking thing on it? And it's only 6 episodes. So I don't think there's anything to lose in this.
No, and I think, and we'll talk about it more in a few minutes, I'm sure, but I think it's made more for me than it is for you, in the sense that although I'm familiar with X-Files, I've probably watched a portion of some of the movies and a portion of a handful of episodes. It's not a series I've seen. I've not seen the first 9 seasons. I know as much about it as anyone who hasn't seen the show, but not as much as the people who have. I don't know if that came across clearly. I know who's who somewhat.
It's come across perfectly because I don't know it that well. That's the thing. I've watched it. I started watching it when it was on Sky One over in England. And it was a show that I watched, enjoyed, and forgot about. Because it just seemed to me like the Monster of the Week. I didn't really notice the mythology that was flowing all the way through it. I think up until the first movie came out, then I realised, hang on, there's a bit more aliens in this, isn't there? And then the movie came out, enjoyed that, but then kind of went off the boil and found the pub. So
now, did you like the Monster of the Week element of it?
The Monster of the Week element, I think I enjoyed it, but sometimes they could be a bit weak. and so that would turn me off of it, and so I'd be, okay, there's more Monster of the Week coming than mythology, so I just ended up not watching it and gradually slipping out of it, and I don't remember what season I stopped watching it in, but then again, I don't remember what season I started watching in either.
See, now the television show Fringe began very much Monster of the Week, and they tried to throw, there's a common element to these incidents, and we will sort of kind of go into it, investigate it. But over the course of its 5-year run, they pretty much abandoned the Monster of the Week and went pure mythology, pure conspiracy connection. What is this driving force behind these? And when they were doing it, Fringe happens to be one of the shows I very, very much enjoyed. But even in the short, I'd say season and a half to 2 seasons, which were largely Monster of the Week-ish, right away people were criticizing throwaway, wasted episodes, silliness of, this particular monster is absurd, or that, it was right after Lost had come out. Actually, right after Lost had ended, I should say.
Yeah, people were trying to fill that hole, weren't they?
Right, and what Lost had brought, which was one of its good and bad elements, was that serial element. And to have the Monster of the Week thing was refreshing, because people always said with Lost, you couldn't jump into it partway through. You missed too much. You didn't know the story. With this Monster of the Weakness, it was refreshing to enjoy a show and be able to watch. You miss a week or two, no big deal. You didn't have to go watch 6 episodes on the DVR first before you could watch the current episode. But then a lot of people didn't like that too. There was still that craving for an extended story. And I did get the sense from what I had heard about the X-Files when it was on originally, that there was a Monster of the Week element and numerous attempts, it seemed, to bring in an underlying mythology. And one of the criticisms I remember hearing back then was to pick one. Like that it seemed to go one route, and like the character with the cigarette and at the end of this episode, I'm familiar with him because I know he's a pivotal character in that conspiracy mythology of the original 9 seasons.
Oh God, yes, yeah. Well,
But I believe there were a number of other elements that were just. It sounded like it tried to go a lot of different paths, trying to find something that people would latch onto, and but that's not why I didn't watch it originally. I'm not a fan of Duchovny or Anderson. I don't care for either of them, and it might be the characters they play, but they both rub me the wrong way. I can't root for them. Right.
Okay. Oh, that's a shame.
Well, I don't know what it would be. What did I had seen as we were getting ready for this podcast. For some reason, I ended up catching a glimpse of the original X-Files pilot and how young Duchovny looked, and it must have been 1990. He had that yuppie late 80s, 90s kind of look.
Yeah.
And he looks so weathered now, but now he looks almost like he's trying to be. Well, I guess that's part of what his character has supposedly gone through, but I don't know. I just can't. I don't like him. I find Anderson just so snarky all the time and unpleasant. And maybe there are moments that I just haven't seen her where she's warm and fuzzy, but there's a series where she's a detective, a European detective, tracking down like a serial killer. I think it's in England.
Isn't that called The Fall or something?
Something, yeah. It's a one-word title like that, and she has that same, just for lack of a better word, unpleasant, cold demeanor. And then Duchovny's been in. There was something on here about Los Angeles policemen during the era of race riots, and with Manson, with Charlie Manson.
Right.
and he plays a troubled policeman. It just, I don't know. I'm not. He's never been one of those actors that I enjoy, as opposed to like Pierce Brosnan. Hey, Pierce Brosnan can do no wrong for me. I'll watch this crappy Pierce Brosnan movie just because he'll always be Remington Steele, and he'll always be just cool and smooth. And
Oh, geez, I'd rather take
there's my
David
guy.
Duchovny any day.
Oh, I'm sure. But no, it's just I don't know. Neither one of them are actors that like I sit and he's in the show. I'll have to go watch. Have to go see that other movie just because they're in it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I suppose you kind of covered my next question. It was going to be, what were your initial thoughts on this episode? Bearing in mind that you're coming into it from kind of, I suppose we are both freshman people going into it, and they had to set their stall out in a way that they would create new openings for new people to come in and watch this. Even die-hard X-File watchers needed to be reintroduced to the new way that they're going to be doing it. So how did that affect you? Did you enjoy the way that they did that or not?
Well, I found it fine. There was the long, maybe 3 or 4 minute narrative where Mulder's kind of bringing everybody up to speed. That worked for me. It was fine. It was all I needed. I've heard a lot of criticism of that. I guess a lot of diehard people didn't want it, but I didn't have an issue with it, especially as the Roswell scenes seem to kind of have some greater significance later on in the episode.
See, I think the diehard people that didn't like it poorly judged it, because you've got people like my son. We sat down and watched it, and he enjoyed it.
You needed that.
But
if you weren't familiar, you needed that couple minutes of who we are, what the focus is going to be.
Exactly. It set the tone for him. He's never seen an X-Files movie. He's never seen an episode of the X-Files. I am very reluctant to show him the pilot of the episode of X-Files because it looks so 90s and it's so unrelated to where he is at the moment. Yeah. And so I think that first bit of narration was really good to set their stall out. It shows them what they've done very, very briefly. You get a glimpse of the monster. The only thing I didn't like about it was the photos that he was laying down were taken from like a third person in the room. And
I've heard criticism of that too. Yeah, like who was taking the pictures?
Yeah, but where did you get them from, mate? Yeah. That doesn't work like that.
But I don't know. The episode would have had to have gone differently. Like if they had a cold open, and it started with some bit of action. Could they have gotten away with something like Star Wars does, where it's not even necessarily part of the story, but there's an action scene where you get just to get you ramped up to speed and see a couple of characters kind of going on. That standard George Lucas ship flying over the horizon in a space battle.
I don't know, because
I don't think they couldn't have introduced. There was nothing that I think they could have done that would have made you recognize what their specialty was, because Mulder and Scully weren't together.
Yeah.
Maybe they could have done. There's the Russian American woman who believes she's been abducted. You maybe could have opened with an abduction, one of her episodes, but then you still have to somehow bring the characters into it, and the show starts with them not together. So,
but they had their money shot of the Roswell crash.
Yes, and I think that was important.
Yeah, definitely. But after the Roswell crash, you get the obligatory hand against the window. If I ever have a car crash, I'm just going to run my hand down the window. Maybe possibly rub it on my body, get some blood on there, and then rub it down the window. Because that's what everyone seems to do. I don't know, maybe it's like a healing power of glass or something. But then they started with the old intro, or bits of the old intro. There was a lot missing from that intro, and I don't recall ever seeing Skinner in the intro either. But I kind of like it.
Well, I think he's going to play an important role in these handful, because it's only the 6 episodes. There seems to be something about. So they just abruptly pulled the plug. What, 14 years ago? They're saying.
Yeah.
And there's a scene in there where Mulder's looking for files, and he says, "I thought no one's been in here since we left." But there's a ladder in the corner. The room's been torn apart, basically.
Yeah, it
so,
has.
I don't know. Maybe that's part of the original 9 seasons. But was there some sort of cataclysmic event where that's it? We're done. I'm trying to think of a parallel thing, but we've disbanded.
Well, Mulder left for a little while, didn't he? See, now this is where I need some knowledge of what went on in the 9 series, but I just don't have it. But...
The T-1000 was was an X-File agent, wasn't he?
Yes, he was, yes. Yeah. But I think just that period in the room, it looks dilapidated. It looks like someone's been in there and gone, "Oh, do you know what? I can't be asked to paint this room and take the ceiling down.
Yeah.
Let's just leave it." But I think that shows you, okay, he's gone. It's been forgotten. And it's a good way of just portraying that it's no one's been there. Nobody has touched these X-Files. They have just been forgotten. They've been put on ice, left on standby for you guys to come back to. And it's a real good way of, once again, introducing new people that haven't seen this before and getting them into it, thinking, oh, hang on, there's a lot of stuff here. There's a lot of history between these 3 people that are forming a nice little triangle. And I'm looking forward to looking back on this, and it might get people to dive back into the old shows.
See, I agree, but it did not have that effect on me. It felt like a missing piece that I hoped I didn't need to know. Like, was there the 3 things that in the first 5 minutes, in the first introductory part that I found myself wondering were, with the Roswell part, was that going to be part of the story, or was that just their way of kind of illustrating? They had sound clips and things like that. Was that just their version of the Roswell crash? And in that initial part, I had no idea whether any of those characters were going to be important.
Yeah.
I wondered whether the reason for the shutdown was going to be something that I wished I knew, and kind of, it's going to sound like I was already turned off. I enjoyed the episode overall, but I was hoping pretty quickly, like, oh, I hope I don't have to sit and wonder, Mulder's so beaten down, and the former director Skinner doesn't have his phone number, and Scully is kind of condescending toward him, and like they clearly, and they had a couple of little comments like that. We've moved on, and we've gone our separate. Like, they almost like nods to the fans of, like, the show ended, we did other things in the dialogue, but I was hoping that the story was going to kind of quickly get to a point where it picked up from there and moved forward, and we weren't going to have to do a whole lot of the 6 episodes would not be about the last 14 years.
Yeah.
That we'd quickly get together and something would happen today.
Yeah. Oh, damn! I forgot what I was going to say.
To talk briefly in parallel, like with Star Wars, they chose with Star Wars to just pick up. I mean, there's a little bit of there's an unknown of where's, certain characters are missing and all that kind of stuff, but it wasn't a movie that then sat there and was one giant flashback, or even really dependent upon flashbacks. It was, okay, time has passed, characters are scattered, and we're all coming back together to face a new challenge. And that's the kind of investment I was looking to make. I felt like if it was going to go back and be a gift to the former fans, of this is what's been happening while you were away, I didn't think I would enjoy that.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. So initial impressions on the characters after all this time away. Then, we can see that Scully is getting on with her life. She's working in a hospital as an assistant, and she looks like she's just carried on with everything. I think that's more portrayed the first time that they actually meet each other face to face. And you can see that she's in the suit. She's looking good. She's looking confident. He rolls up in a car, possibly an Uber car, and he said that he's been hitchhiking.
Yeah.
But he's in slacks. He's looking a bit messy. He hasn't shaved. He looks a bit messed up. I must admit, I've seen this episode twice. The first time, I was not impressed. And I was a bit worried about coming on here and talking about it. So I thought, no, I must sit down and watch it again. Second time is a much better viewing. Really, much better viewing. And Duchovny, he comes across a lot better in the second viewing. In the first time, I thought he was very stilted, very dry, no emotion at all, very monotone. And the second time round, you notice little things that I didn't notice the second time round. In my head, I've put it down as there was a mention of him being depressed. Sveta was talking to Scully.
Yes.
And apparently reading her mind. Whether she was reading her mind or not, I do not know. But she mentioned about possibly him being depressed, and that is possibly why they split up.
Right. I thought she said like he's been depressed since, and they got interrupted in some way because I was, like, as I said, I was kind of still waiting to try to decide, is this going to go forwards or backwards?
Yeah.
And how you describe the two characters, it definitely gave me that feel. It's kind of a common representation of characters where one has moved on and one is haunted by an event, and there's that conflict of the one is beseeching the other to, how could you just forget it? How you can't ignore what happened. And I found myself even thinking, from the little bit I know about Scully, she's experienced so much, and she's just going to go back and work in the hospital doing ordinary things when you were so aware of what's out there.
Yeah.
That, how do you just shrug it off and be like, oh, well, yes, there's aliens and I was abducted and this happened, but I'll have my coffee.
See, yeah, with the mention of the depression and stuff like that, I put it down to his acting as, okay, maybe he's on anti-meds. And maybe he's just a bit, because meds, they don't make you happy, they don't make you sad, they just make you live, they give you a kind of grey zone in which to live in. And it's kind of a fluffy, cloudy feeling that you get from these. And you can be very monotone when you're on them. And so I don't know whether he was trying to do that or whether it was just coming across like that, but it kind of works well for me on the second viewing for it. But Mulder, in his first time you see him, he turns around and says, "My life has become a joke." And he's watching YouTube stuff on his laptop, but he's got a little bit of sellotape or duct tape over the webcam on his computer. So it says to me straight away, you're hit back into it. He's paranoid as anything already. He's just paranoid about absolutely everything. And he still wants to believe. He still wants to do that. In the background, he's got an "I want to believe" poster that it focuses on. And so, yeah, he's still in that zone. It just hasn't been with Scully.
See, the parallel that comes to mind is the Godzilla movie, where the father, who was at the incident when the Mutos first appeared, I'm drawing a blank on his name. The dad from Malcolm in the Middle. Who's the actor?
Cranston.
Yes, Bryan Cranston he's the Mulder, and the son, Aaron Johnson, is the Scully. Like,
Yeah.
you know, he's moved on. You know, this amazing thing happened, and this big mystery, and well, life goes on. We're gonna deny it until it comes right in our face, and um, so I see the same kind of disheveledness between Cranston's character and Duchovny's character, of like they're haunted and not letting go, and um, sounds we don't know where Mulder is. They talked about he lives in that little house. It's good for him to get out. And like you said, he hears them talking about aliens on the video and how it's the butt of a joke.
Yeah, yeah, straight away, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
Did that actually happen in real life with Obama on a talk show like that?
I don't know. There were so many clips in there. I'm sure that the comment was made that Jimmy Kimmel made about that if he was president, the first thing he'd do is unlock it. But I don't. I've seen it twice also, and I didn't catch either time if they edited it in a way that made it sound like Obama answered, or if it just cut to something else.
Yeah, I think he went to answer. He was like nodding, but it was drowned out by Duchovny speaking. What else do we have? Then we have an introduction with Tad.
Yes.
What was his last name? Tad
O'Malley.
O'Malley. Wow. There's a TV name if ever I heard one.
Yes.
He seems like a clickbait junkie. Mm-hmm. He's making a living off conspiracies. He almost reminded me of the reporter out of V, of the reboot of V. Don't know why, just that mannerisms that he was giving off. But first impressions of him, he was just a slimy little character that was there to make money off of off of Mulder and Scully, and maybe use them to get to more evidence, possibly, of extraterrestrial activity.
Well, do you think, like, he was aware of them and their work, but he was doing all that independently? And I guess it was Mulder who said repeatedly about you're just exploiting these set of topics and making money off it. And he said, no, it's a legitimate interest. He did seem to have legitimate information, you know, the ARV that he led Mulder to and the contacts he had.
Yeah.
But I don't know. He kind of disappears as the story goes on. And I don't know if is he a puppet? Is someone telling him to do something? Does he work for the cigarette man? But the timing of things, the way the story goes, it's tough to say. My first impression, as you said, was that he was a legitimate independent force, brought to the attention of Scully and Mulder by their former, right? What's the Stringer? Is that the former director's name?
Skinner.
I'm sorry. Yes. So he had brought O'Malley to the detective's attention, but then as the story went on, it seemed more like O'Malley had an agenda.
Yeah, I didn't even think about there being a connection between O'Malley and the cigarette smoking man, but he could be. I don't know. Maybe he could be a smoke screen, because smoke screens about Roswell were mentioned later on when Mulder met the doctor from the Roswell incident. But
well, just because he seemed to disappear, like I felt like all the characters, you knew where they were at the end of the story, except for O'Malley.
Yeah,
he's gone dark. But then we see the cigarette man, and he makes a comment like, "We have a complication," and I felt like that would be that it was somehow connected to the fact that they lost O'Malley, but I don't know. It was hard for me too, because I didn't know who of these peripheral characters were recurring. I knew O'Malley was new because I had seen interviews of the actor and how excited he was for the part and what a fan he was. I thought it took me the second viewing to figure out who the doctor was when he appears later in the story. The old man that Mulder goes to meet.
Yeah, well, that's one thing we got to get used to again is the typewriter typing on the screen, telling us the date, telling us where we are and where we're set in.
Well, I didn't, because Mulder goes to meet, he goes to the street and meets the older gentleman in the, he says, I met all the protocols you want us to do. It's the way we always meet. So my thought is it's another character from the first 9 seasons. And visually, it took a little bit to try to figure it out. But story-wise, as I pieced together, the story is talking about the military making use of alien material. Now we're going back to that scene at the beginning in the introduction with the Roswell crash, and I'm like, well, that could be the doctor, and then I pieced together that's who it was. But my understanding is he's not intended to be a character from the first 9 seasons. He's just
it was mentioned that he came to Mulder 10 years ago in their conversation.
Yes,
but I don't
ready,
remember.
He said, and things.
Yeah, I don't remember seeing him at all. So it must have been on an episode or 2 where I haven't seen that. So I've missed that. But it's calling back.
I don't think it could be the same actor because he looks so young in the Roswell scenes. He would have had to have been significantly different looking, much younger. I think 10 years. Well,
yeah.
He said 10 years. He said 10 years, correct?
Yeah.
So that's during the interim. That's in between.
Yeah. Yes, it would be. Yes. So yeah, we don't even need to worry about him then.
So this is during Mulder's
wilderness
lost time.
Period. Yeah.
He's looking for a sympathetic ear and someone he's not letting go the way Scully did. That makes
his
more
difficult
sense.
Second album phase.
Yes.
But okay, right. Let's talk about that ARV that we're introduced to. Tad takes Mulder after we've been introduced to Sveta, who's the lady who Mulder has previously interviewed, which he didn't remember. I thought he was kind of eyeing her up and going, "Hello, I would have remembered you if I'd been drunk that night." And we see her scars on her stomach, and we hear her story about being abducted.
Yes,
we get all that. That's fine. Tad then takes Mulder to see an ARV. Tad just turns up in a helicopter outside Sveta's house, and hello, here we are. I'm going to take you to a secret location where we're building an ARV, a alien replica vehicle.
Yes.
Independence Day, anyone? This really reminded me of Independence Day and walking into a hangar and seeing an alien ship there. It was nice to see it though. They were talking about. I brought it up in the. Where was it? They were talking about a Faraday cage. The alien spacecraft was kept in the Faraday cage.
Right.
It's not an alien spacecraft. It's a craft that we have built using the alien technology we have gathered, i.e. from the Roswell incident.
Right.
They also talk about it having a gravity warp drive. They also ask, how does it have a gravity warp drive? This is interesting because they say it's from
Element 115.
115 Unumpentium.
Yeah.
It's called. That has recently been discovered, or not discovered, created last year. So we're talking about right up to date science stuff that we're diving into right now.
Right.
It's a man-made radioactive. Is it a radioactive material or radioactive element? Sorry, has a half-life of 220 milliseconds. So it's not going to be around for long before it radiates away. But yeah, this is an actual element that we have now.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of like that, us diving into real world science and trying to link it to real world stuff as well, especially the stuff that was formally announced in December of last year.
Yeah.
And it looks quite cool, actually. Disappearing and stuff like that. It was good.
I think that was the highlight of the special effects, and I still thought it was a little bit. It felt a little cheap to me. Like at some points, the ship looked pretty good, and I thought the dissolve looked good. But like the Roswell crash scene, I thought it felt like they had skimped on special effects money.
Well, I suppose...
Or the style, I guess I should say. That it felt familiar, and it felt not as good as what you see on some other shows.
Yeah, but I think they don't want to put all their eggs in one basket. You've got Monsters of the Week episodes coming up, I'm guessing, because I haven't seen the second episode yet. I don't know how many times we're going to dip back into the mythology. I think they're going to be hard pushed not to come back to it again, but they're also don't want to displease the people that really like the Monster of the Week stories.
Well, I did see the second episode because it was kind of promoted here as a part 1, part 2. And without spoiling, I can tell you it is a Monster of the Week episode.
Right, okay, so we're back into them.
And there is... This episode does lay the groundwork for a mythology.
Okay.
But I would say I was surprised. There were a lot of things. Let me phrase it. I'm going to phrase it carefully so I don't spoil anything. When we were talking about Fringe before, and people used to always kind of evaluate the episodes, and we did that with Lost too. The episodes sometimes felt like they could have been in a different order, and when you had an episode that you felt like you could completely pick up and move somewhere else, you question the value of it sometimes. And this, it has the monster. It is a Monster of the Week episode, and it has a mythology component to it. But to an extent, I almost felt like, aside from them getting back together, that happens here. I didn't see much about it that made me feel like you couldn't have flip-flopped elements sequentially, or that. Yeah, I'm expecting episode 3 to be similar in the sense that 2 and 3 could be interchanged. I didn't feel like the mythology was advanced much, but we can talk about that once you've seen it.
Okay.
But it is referenced.
Right, okay. Well, that's good, because this being a mini-series, we kind of need it all knitted together nicely.
Yes.
Such a short season, just to have 6 episodes. And so you want that compactness of it. If it is just going to be a sole Monster of the Week material, you need a thread of evidence or thread of something running through each and every one of them. So that's good. I'm glad about that, even if it is just very finely woven in there. That's fine by me. I'll take that.
And the dots might be connected later. I mean, it could have a big epiphany moment coming down the road. But I mean, I see bits of it, but I just where you and I have such a history with these serial type episodes where the episode ends, you can't wait to see what happens next. I, to an extent, felt that I was looking forward to what happened next after this episode that we watched, and did not necessarily feel like, we've continued the story.
Yeah,
we've kind of felt like a sidestep, but it might turn out not to be the case.
Well, they have to tread finely, because they have done that a couple of times on The Walking Dead, which I'm a fan of.
Mm-hmm.
And it gets to the point where, okay, come on, if you're not going to go back there, I've lost interest, I don't care. And then 6 weeks later, you go back to a certain point where you kind of knew, because it was so long ago, nothing was really going to happen, and you're like, okay. You can't really fool me like that. It doesn't really work like that. If you'd maybe left it 1 or 2 weeks, yeah, okay, I could be fooled into that. Any more than that, no, I don't care. I've just lost interest whatsoever.
Well, and so character-wise, we have Mulder, we have Scully, we have Skinner, um, O'Malley, maybe. Like I said, he disappears at the end of the episode.
I hope he does come back.
And then I was very surprised to see that we lost Svelta. I mean, I felt like she was where it looked like we were going with this mythology. And so many other stories then she becomes the ward of the, they take care of her, they protect her. We're going to get you some answers. We're going to take care of you. And she's vaporized.
Well, yeah. Before that, we find out that she hasn't been abducted by aliens. We have that drop.
Yes.
Which is where I was getting a bit... I think the first watching, I was getting a bit confused. Okay, so now Mulder thinks that he's been duped, and it's all a cover-up, and now he doesn't believe in aliens, but it didn't come across that well. The second time round, it flowed a bit better, and then you could see, okay, he can see that it isn't aliens, but it's the government fighting against the humans using alien technology for the human race. And it flowed a lot cleaner the second time round, should we say.
But did you, I don't know if enjoy or appreciate's the right way to put it, but I felt like he was basically, again, kind of just throwing away the first 9 seasons. And it had a plausibility issue for me that he's all of a sudden there forsaking everything. Like you said, saying he's been duped, and I understand he had the talk with Svelta, and she told him the trigger was really she told him what she thought was happening.
Yeah,
it wasn't even like he witnessed something or stumbled on evidence. He said to her, you looked at O'Malley when I asked you about the abductions, and she says, well, it's because I don't really think they're abductions. I think it's men doing it to me. And he goes, that's it. We've been lied. We've been lied to the whole time.
Well, yeah, which is... when we first meet Svelta, it looks as if Tad is leading her along.
Yes.
And by the way that she'll say something, he'll back it up straight away and then explain what she has just said in a very controlling manner. Mm-hmm. And so you think, okay, maybe she's been manipulated and pushed into certain ways to explain something which could be a conspiracy which he can make money on, and he can carry on making his life richer and richer. And then it's all dropped with her turning around and saying, no, it wasn't aliens, I'm scared, I'm worried about people going to kill me, but I was abducted by machines, or by the flying machines, but there were men in them. And like you said, I felt the first time round as if all of the X-Files had just been washed away when he turned around and said, yep, we've been duped. This is all rubbish. I don't care about it anymore. I don't believe anymore. So it wasn't brought across to me very well. Or I didn't understand it very well the first time round. But yeah, to see her destroyed at the very end of the episode in a way that she had been, I'm guessing that's the way that she'd been abducted previous times.
Yes.
And yeah, I wasn't expecting her to bite the bullet so quickly.
Well, it was a part of a flood of closure. So we're 40 minutes into the hour, and all of a sudden now the government goes and blows up the ARV and leave. They shut down O'Malley, he disappears, and they vaporize her. And the government comes in, wipes it clean, and disappears. And we didn't see the triggering event for that. Or I'm not picking up on it. If it was like, it wasn't like they went to. I know O'Malley has his show, but it wasn't like there was a press conference or they went and talked to the wrong person and he went and revealed it.
Well, that's what you got to worry about. I think maybe Tad had picked up on it that Mulder had been told the truth, because they were talking about dirty planes earlier on, weren't they?
Yeah.
And Scully got out the car to talk to Mulder on the phone. He said he couldn't talk to her on the phone just yet. So maybe this Tad is listening in on everything that's going around. He's already dropped that hint that that is going on. He's picked up on the fact. He's then ratted her out to make it look like to reinforce his own conspiracy theories. He's ratted her out.
Well, we'll have to see where he is, if anywhere, then, because he was fawning over her, and I assume he tried to make that a date. Were they on a date when he came together and was holding her hand, and she's in the car?
I'm assuming that he was wooing her, definitely.
He's a very swarmy type. His hands on her when she's on the phone. It creeped me out a little bit.
Yeah, I've got to admit, when I drive around in my stretch limousine, I don't always have iced champagne in there. No. So, he is pulling out all the stops. And
her demeanor made it tough, especially not knowing her character. But, was she enjoying it? It was like I expected her to blow him off when he was acting like that, and yet there she was, and she's telling Mulder, "Can we talk about this later?"
I think she was. I think she was enjoying it. It was like, hang on a minute, I've got my ex-boyfriend on the phone here. I must step out the car just in case this gets a little awkward. By the way, stop touching me up.
What is the I understand it's like an old moonlighting type relationship. They're rivals, and then they grow close, and they have affection and all. But do they have? How far along did their relationship come before it imploded?
What, Mulder and Scully?
Yes.
Well, they had a kid.
Okay.
They had a kid. They'd had a kid by the second movie. Okay. They were together in the second movie. That Svelta. Is that her name? Sorry,
I think so.
Yeah, something like that. She said about when she was apparently reading Scully's mind that you had history with him. Oh, you have a kid with him as well. And then she looked, and you wouldn't understand. You haven't been abducted. And then she gave her that really good look, as if, hello, I was on the X-Files and I've been abducted many times.
Yes.
And so they do have a solid history together. I think the stuff I saw, they were always the will it won't it couple. And I think personally it should have stayed the will it won't it couple. Mm-hmm. Always and not so quite. I don't know if you remember the first movie that they had. There was that scene where they were almost going to kiss, and then she got stung by a bee. And as you do.
That's the universal. So many shows have that tension, and even fans like Lost had the Jack versus Sawyer, and it was which couples will get together, and it seems like inevitably once they get together, you might have a moment of gratification, but then it's ruined the show. It was better before they were together. It was better when they had that tension.
Yeah. So, do you think we'll see Tad again in the next 5 episodes? I know you've seen the next episode, so if he's in there, don't mention that. Okay.
I do think so, and that was my expectation immediately when they introduced the character, like that he was going to be a majority of the run character. But then today, I don't know what his role would be, because as I rewatched the episode today, Joel McHale was a guest star, which it just struck me as odd in the sense because it's only 6 episodes. You would think like I don't know, Svetlana, I'm not sure what her name. The woman who's vaporized, she's a guest star to me. I've seen her on other shows, so she has star credibility. She's worthy of that kind of title, not just an extra. And she's one and done.
Yeah.
Now with Tad, um, to what extent are we going to see him? If it's only 6 episodes, I'm expecting him to be a significant part of it.
I hope
Are
so.
are the stars only those 3 returning characters? I'd have to look more closely and see how they credited everyone.
Well, the main stories are going to revolve around Mulder, Scully, Skinner, and the cancer man, cigarette smoking man, whatever you want to call him.
Yes. Now, Skinner had a relatively small role.
I know, but
bringing them together,
he looks buff. He looks really good for his age, and especially next to Mulder, who really looks dejected and drained, exhausted. Skinner just looks like he's on top of his game. Bang, I need you guys back.
Yeah.
He looks good in it. I've always had a fond memories of Skinner, and he was really good in the first movie. I can't remember if he was in the second movie. But yeah, I always liked him. So I'm hoping for more Skinner action. Whether we get any action from him, maybe. The only action you probably get from him is he's sitting behind his desk. He stands up behind his desk. He adjusts his...
Jonah Jameson of X-Files.
Yeah, he adjusts his trousers and he sits back down again. That's all the action that he really gets. You're never going to see him whoop out a gun in these next 5 episodes.
I don't. Are we going to see much action in the 5 episodes period? I don't know. Other than an explosion, and it's not a very physical show.
It's not, but once again, you're trying to draw people into certain elements. You want to... X-Files isn't really an action show. It's more of a suspense, horror, sci-fi,
cerebral,
haunting kind of thing. Weird and wonderful monsters of the week sometimes, and ghostly goings on. So it's all about just out your eye's view. What's in the corner of your eye? Oh, look over there. Nothing's there. That's the kind of show this is. You're not going to have massive explosions every single episode.
Right. Well, I think that would be my criticism of it, though, is that it didn't deliver on that. To me, a Monster of the Week, a good Monster of the Week style, or something with the mythology, has the episode go along, and 3/4 of the way through, you're like, oh, wow, this thing from 10 minutes in is now significant.
Yeah.
Or you connect the dots yourself as it goes along, and you start to anticipate. I felt this had too much was spelled out for us. Too much was narrated, not just like at the beginning, but Duchovny's big speeches to Scully, and he's connecting the dots for us. He's telling us, and maybe it should have been a 2-hour episode instead of 1, so that it could move along at a little slower pace. But it just felt like too many things happened, either with a long explanation or with no explanation, like the government cracking down, and no pieces that you can look back on and say, oh, that's how they did it. Like you mentioned about the plane, which I hadn't thought of, but I don't feel like that's enough. Had it been that, and then a scene where like if I had 2 or 3 supporting pieces I could put together, which I would have thought when the plane goes overhead, when Mulder's talking to the doctor, I did think for a minute of what O'Malley had said, but I don't feel like that was enough to be the precipitating. And maybe it was supposed to be because Mulder says, I saw an ARV and all that stuff, but he didn't say where. He didn't. It's too much of a leap. And then where we didn't have to make that leap, it was too much spelled out. My favorite of that type of show, which is what I expected X-Files to be, has the seeds sown in there, and then you piece it together, or you can look back and connect the dots. And I didn't see that done.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, so I think we covered pretty much all the beats in this episode. To wrap it up for just the episode, I want to ask you what you'd like to see with incoming episodes as well. But just for this episode,
Yeah.
were you satisfied? Were you drawn in? Is it good enough to pull someone into the X-Files?
Yes, but it did not make me want to go back and watch the first 9 seasons, which was probably good, because that could have been, if I felt like I had to, that would have been overwhelming. But I also don't feel like, like you said with your son, I don't feel like it's necessarily going to have aged well, and I don't know that it's going to be important enough to warrant the time.
Okay, fair enough. Because I have been watching. I've got the first 2 seasons at home. For the 20th anniversary of X-Files starting in 2013, I think it was 2014, something like that. Myself and Pete in the Shonky Lab, we did a cover of the pilot episode, and ever since then, I've been slowly working through myself up to season. I'm pretty much halfway through season 2 now. And just taking it nice and slowly, watch one whenever I fancy it. I'm not compelled to watch it. I'm not forced to watch it. I just watch it when at my leisure. And so it works better for me. And once you get used to the style of it, the very 90s style of it as well, it flows really well. And so this doesn't, like you say, it doesn't pull me back and make me want to watch more X-Files of the old variety, but this after the second viewing has made me want to see more new X-Files and new monsters of the week and new mythology. So even though it took 2 tries to watch it, I'm there. I'm going to enjoy this. Even if it is just 6 episodes and we don't get anything else, I'm going to enjoy this.
Yes, and I agree. It definitely made me want to see the next episode, but it didn't leave me the way Lost and Fringe did, where, oh my god, I can't believe I have to wait a whole week for the next episode. It was, that wasn't bad. I'll definitely watch the next one and see what happens.
Cool. So,
what do you? Oh, go ahead.
Well, no, go on. You go first. Sorry, man.
Oh, I was gonna say, what do you anticipate it's building toward? Is it building toward full closure on the series? Do you think it's looking to try to create the option of an ongoing thing? Like, is this to tie up loose ends and just give you a glimpse of where the characters are 20 years later? Or do you think it's looking to do a Star Trek style reboot and introduce, they'll have a sidekick in episode 4, and that office continues, and X-Files Junior goes on, and
oh god, no, hope not. No, I think this is more building up to a cliffhanger at the end of episode 6. I think it's building up to this cliffhanger because you could possibly have another season after this and then infinitum, or you could have a movie to wrap everything up. That's
what the movie was supposed to be. The movie was supposed to be kind of a extended episode cliffhanger, kind of like, if I remember correctly, it was give you a little bit more, show you where they're at, but it ended. It was the first movie kind of ended with hoping to leave you wanting more.
Yeah.
I
think if they are ever going to wrap up the X-Files, they will wrap it up in a movie. Which seems a bit weird because it isn't a movie. It isn't solely just a movie. It's a TV show that has its movie episodes. But I feel that they might want to go out in a bang. This might lead to a cliffhanger and then see what the reaction is after the 6 episodes. I'm hoping to have, like I've said before, some mythology weaved in between every episode of this. I'm not expecting it, but I'm hoping for it. And I'm definitely hoping for some really good standalone episodes.
And will you be happy if the route this goes is what's been suggested by Mulder? Like with Fringe was basically supposed to be the next iteration of the X-Files, like that they investigate the unusual, and it's even referenced in a couple of times that as if it's, I forget if they used case names or character names, but there were definite nods back and forth between the two. But Fringe went with like an escalation of weirdness, crazier technology and other dimensional, and it went farther into the fantasy science fiction realm, where this episode seems to indicate that it's 15 years later, but we're not going to have 15 years fancier aliens. We're not going to do an Independence Day 2 kind of thing. We're going to pull it back and reground it in it's men. It's the government.
Yeah. First thing.
We're going to use regular 22 caliber pistols, and we're going to be fighting humans, not the boss from a video game level.
Yeah. First thing, nobody wants an Independence Day 2.
It's coming.
I know it's coming. Oh, God. And I think I might be out that day that it lands.
Yes.
I'm going to try and make sure I am out anyway. I don't know. I
would think if you watched the first 9 seasons, you watched it as a fan of aliens and UFOs and Loch Ness and the supernatural, and even though it probably migrated from Monster of the Week toward more mythology, I would think fans of those 9 seasons want the mythology to be a colony on Mars, or like in Fringe, it was the first people, and it was this something grander than just greedy politicians want to take over America and then the world. And
do you know, I don't think any ending to the mythology on this will be satisfactory. They'll have to leave it open, an ongoing issue, because anything that they write, it's been done in many other programs before, like Lost, like video games as well. Some people moan about the Mass Effect games. Some people were happy with the ending of that. Some people were not happy with the end of it. Some people were not happy with the way it was dealt with. And you're never going to please everyone. And so, especially with like Star Wars coming out recently, you're not going to please everyone with that. Yeah. And so I feel, although I would like it wrapped up, I don't think I do want it wrapped up, because I kind of like the openness of the questions left there.
Well, the mechanism for closure is very different by going this route. Like, you're not going to have a War of the Worlds, Independence Day, original Visitors series. You overcome the aliens, the oppressors, your rival.
No, I don't believe it would go that far.
It's gonna, whatever the enemy, right? Maybe again, this man with the cigarette. I know he's a recurring central character, but I think you're gonna have, if it's X-Files versus this government agency, there's gonna be pieces that remain, kind of like in the Captain America movies, how like Hydra just lingers.
Right.
You never defeat them completely.
Yeah. Okay. So, if you could choose any standalone episode, like a Monster of the Week, what would you like to see as a Monster of the Week episode in this next 6 or next 5 episodes? Because I have one in mind, which I would.
Well, you go ahead, because I've seen the next one, so okay. I know where that goes. But go ahead.
Okay. Bearing in mind, I do not know anything about the next episode, so if I hit on it, I apologise. I do not know. I'd like a Slender Man episode.
That's it. No, sorry, just kidding.
Ah, I would dearly love a Slender Man episode because I think it fits into X-Files so well. The mystery and also bringing in new technology which they didn't have in the 90s, like the internet and YouTube and stuff like that. Bringing that in, and because that was all born on was it Creepypasta or somewhere like that, and it was just stories, and now it has become a real thing where people and children and adolescents are actually performing crazy acts on each other. And so I think a Slender Man episode where, is it real? Is it really real? That would really draw in your adolescent teenagers, people that might be interested in the X-Files, and that could be a good Monster of the Week for them.
See, I think this is going to go more the route of a traditional miniseries, like how we used to talk about those other serials. Did they have the end in mind? I think with 6 episodes, each has to advance the story somewhat, and I don't know. I mean, the technology's there because of the aliens. The government's using it. It feels like they're going to go more the route of, well, they have to identify their opponents. They have to locate them. They have to have conflict with them. And then you have to have your resolution. Or maybe it'll end with a cliffhanger of, what happens next after they finally have their conflict. But I don't know that there's much time for meaningful Monster of the Week.
Oh, that
like
so
yeah, but
good.
you wanted to contribute. So what elements do we have so far? Whatever they did to Svel, the woman, whatever they've been doing to her.
Hang on, I've got her name here. Hang on,
Okay.
Where is it? Sveta.
You would assume, and I don't remember if she said how long it's been going on, but you would assume that has produced a Monster of the Week that they'll deal with.
Yeah.
And if she's not the only one, you would assume there'd be another. But then you don't want to face an army of like mutant. Are they all going to be the same monster? Is it going to be?
I don't know, but I've just had a wicked
variations?
idea.
Go ahead.
Right, okay. Flipping out, I should be writing the X-Files. You would have like the Slender Man episode, which would come on like the YouTube and the Creepypasta and them investigating it, which could tie in with extraterrestrial beings actually being the Slender Man. See, it works. I haven't written it down yet, but in my mind it works, and that's what's important.
There are two elements to this episode that I don't know the significance of, and maybe it might be nothing, but I was left just wondering the what and why. So we have the aliens just being obliterated in the Roswell crash. They're shot. The doctor tries to stop them. Then the other soldiers shoot. He had the hand on the thing.
Yeah.
So are we left to? And we saw on the table when Mulder's giving his narration, you see aliens being autopsied. But are we left to think that the technology and the dead bodies are what was left? There was no living alien from Roswell. And then aside from that, the doctor says to Mulder, Roswell's a smokescreen. And Mulder says later, what happened at Roswell and Aztec. And I didn't know what Aztec. That he implied there was like another incident, another alien encounter, which I didn't know if that was something from the show or what it would be. But
he was. Didn't he mention? Oh, what was it? Hang on. He mentioned something.
It's kind of after he has his epiphany.
Tuskegee.
Well, he's talking about when they lie. He says to the woman, she says, "Why would the government lie?" And he says, "Oh, they lie all the time." He talks about Tuskegee, and then there's like a a woman's name, like Heather Lips or something. It was some sort of weird name that he said.
Oh, okay. I must have missed that.
But when they're at another point, he's talking about. I think it's after he has his realization, and he's going on about they got the technology at Roswell, and more as like it's Roswell or even more this Aztec thing, and that's after he talks to the doctor. I don't know if it's not in that same conversation, but it's after that conversation.
Right. I'll have to go back and watch that again.
Yeah. So I guess when you ask about the monster, the weakness of it, the flashback element I'm looking for, because I don't really care so much about the last 12 years at this point, and I don't really care about the first 9 seasons. They've made that not important. They've made what was important was the Roswell crash and what happened there, and this old man doctor. He seems to be an important figure. So I guess my monster of the week wish would be to see at least 35 minutes of what happened then. And I assume that, something will have happened, a mutation, some alien spore, the blob, something like that. But some reason that kind of justifies the government's view of how to treat these aliens.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no malicious intent demonstrated. There's no weapons or attack.
No, not in the Roswell one. In fact, we attack the alien who's laying on the floor. So, yeah.
Like a lot of times in movies and stuff, you get the character who sits there and their twisted perception of things is, we can't let them live. They did this. And we as the omniscient moviegoers know that they're wrong to view it that way, whether that they're racist or had a bad experience or whatever. But there's no evident justification for the posture we're taking. We should be afraid. We should be on defense. We should be doing what happens in so many other sci-fi shows where they use that technology to try to create a defense for when they come, which I think, again, is the part of the premise of Independence Day 2. I think that it's supposed to be that we've all used all this debris from the first Independence Day attack is now incorporated in our society. I think Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. does that too. After the Avengers attack, all the stuff from those aliens that came, all that technology is often part of the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. plots and their Monster of the Week stuff.
Okay. I have no idea about Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I have no interest in that whatsoever.
No, I've watched 2 episodes, but I like Deathstroke, the character, his origin in the TV show I know is related to a piece of alien technology from the Avengers movie. So like that's how it's kind of advanced the whole world. The result of that attack in the first Avengers is that the entire world has taken a giant leap forward technology-wise. We've, Tony Stark and others are making that part of our everyday life, and I would assume that would have been a natural result of the Roswell incident, just from rather than turning on ourselves, looking upward. I mean, there was no indication that we're preparing for the next alien to come.
Right. Okay.
Independence Day 2. I really do think that I've heard that as I have to look that up actually, because I'm pretty sure that's where that's going.
I'm still living in a world where I don't need Independence Day 2 at all. I saw that trailer for that movie, and I think within 30 seconds I decided no, just nope. No, thank you very much. Don't need it.
Here we go. A film synopsis of Independence Day Resurgence. Using recovered extraterrestrial technology, the nations of Earth collaborate on an immense defense program to protect the planet. When the aliens attack with unprecedented force, only the ingenuity of a few brave men and women can save the world. but that's a logical step to me. And like I said, it's done other places. So I would be interested to see what caused this shift. Like in the Hulk mythology, General Ross is a pivotal factor of how everything turns against the Hulk, and Bruce Banner, rather than being a victim, is a target.
Right.
It's his own hatred of this is hatred of Bruce, and the fact his daughter's is involved in there, but that whole treatment of the Hulk from the beginning can be traced back to things that happened with General Ross, and I wonder what we're going to find out in this X-Files series was the thing that put things in motion this way. And the doctor does say Roswell is just part of it. So like they were ready for that in that scene we saw. They were there, they had a plan, it didn't look like it was the first alien experience.
No, definitely not. No, I think with the Doctor, it was his first alien experience.
Yeah,
because he had that look of shock and awe in his face where they pulled up in front of it. But the other guys, the Men in Black or the Man in Black, fired first without hesitation, and then all the people around him just fired as well. And so that shows, they've dealt with this before, they've been through this before. The aliens, in their eyes, are either hostile or don't belong there or shouldn't be there, or they're trying to do something that they shouldn't be doing. And so they just removed it from the situation. Or it could have been a case of, well, we're there to get the technology. You didn't find any aliens, did you? Or none were alive, were they? And then they just remove it just to get the technology.
Yeah. Which
I can see happening. So,
do you know, does X-Files have a single race of aliens? Or is it like Star Trek where there's... Or Star Wars where there's multiple races?
I wouldn't be able to say whether this mythology is a couple of races or if it's just down to the same planet type make.
Yeah, like one interaction
race.
with one species, like
do not
Greys
know.
Or whatever.
I
don't know.
I do not know, but it'll be interesting to find out, and it'll also be interesting if there was several. So, yeah, looking forward to that.
Yeah, and that's a good sign in the sense that I'm fearful that 6 episodes won't be enough, which makes me...
That's good, though.
Please, yeah, I'm invested in it. I want more. I just hope it delivers on some level.
Okay. So, would we call this a win for the X-Files, this episode?
Yeah, I would call it a pleasant surprise. It had all the potential to be a disappointment, and it was good enough.
Good. That's what I like to hear. I'm down with that as well, as the kids say nowadays. Okay, so I think we'll wrap this first episode of Rethinking the X-Files up here. Yeah. Where can people find you if they would like to contact you, or if you've got anything to plug, then just stick it here now.
All right. Well, as far as plugging things, my online production has been low, but I'm looking for that reason to re-kickstart. So certainly interest in me will help me have an interest in doing that as well. So you can find me on Twitter at SHC1970. I do a lot more listening than talking these days, but that's always, I've said it many times, but I've fallen into a very offline world, and how awful that is. All the kids today say all the action's online. That's where I got to be. So I'm looking to get back to forsaking my real world family and going virtual again. So if you're not my friend already, definitely find me on Twitter, and you can find me on Facebook as well, just as Scott Copperman.
Excellent. You can find me on Twitter at Elton McManus. You can find me on Facebook at Elton McManus. You can find me on Google Plus at Elton McManus. You can also find me on a a couple of episodes of podcasts. One being the Shonky Lab. I've just recorded an episode with the wonderful Dean Martin, who has his own X-Files podcast as well, called The X-Files Podcast, which is through LSG Media. So please go over there. After you listen to this, don't be cheap. If this is the first of 6 episodes you got lined up, listen to them first before you go over there. But, please do pay them attention as well. That was on Shonky Lab. We were talking about the upcoming movies of 2016. There is maybe 70, possibly 80 episodes in the back catalogue, which is on iTunes. You can find all of that on rogue2.com and shonkylab.com as well. Other podcasts I do. Witlist for the Defence. You can find that witlist.geekplanetonline.com. It's where we put your guilty pleasures on trial. Black Dog Podcast. It's a film community where we grab a film, we talk about it. Sometimes it's a shit covered goggles. Sometimes it's a rose tinted specs. We talk about it. Great community over there. They got a lovely Facebook group, which is always buzzing, always full of stuff. People always posting on there as well. So find Black Dog at blackdog.geekplanetonline.com. All these podcasts are on iTunes and they're all over the Facebook as well. I think I'm going to leave the plug in there because that was huge. I've never done such a big plug. Blimey.
You're a busy man.
Yeah. So, until next time, find us on there. The best way to find out about the show, possibly the next show might even be live so you can put in your own 2 penneth worth. Just follow me on Twitter and then I'll give out all the details on there if it does happen at all. So, until next time, I shall say goodbye and we'll see you in Mulder's cave next time.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
Bye. You needed that couple minutes of who we are, what the focus is going to be.
Exactly. It set the tone for him. He's never seen an X-Files movie. He's never seen an episode of the X-Files. I am very reluctant to show him the pilot of the episode of X-Files because it looks so 90s and it's so unrelated to where he is at the moment. Yeah. And so I think that first bit of narration was really good to set their stall out. It shows them what they've done very, very briefly. You get a glimpse of the monster. The only thing I didn't like about it was the photos that he was laying down were taken from like a third person in the room. And
I've heard criticism of that too. Yeah, like who was taking the pictures?
Yeah, but where did you get them from, mate? Yeah. That doesn't work like that.
But I don't know. The episode would have had to have gone differently. Like if they had a cold open, and it started with some bit of action. Could they have gotten away with something like Star Wars does, where it's not even necessarily part of the story, but there's an action scene where you get just to get you ramped up to speed and see a couple of characters kind of going on. That standard George Lucas ship flying over the horizon in a space battle.
I don't know, because
I don't think they couldn't have introduced. There was nothing that I think they could have done that would have made you recognize what their specialty was, because Mulder and Scully weren't together.
Yeah.
Maybe they could have done. There's the Russian American woman who believes she's been abducted. You maybe could have opened with an abduction, one of her episodes, but then you still have to somehow bring the characters into it, and the show starts with them not together. So,
but they had their money shot of the Roswell crash.
Yes, and I think that was important.
Yeah, definitely. definitely. But after the Roswell crash, you get the obligatory hand against the window. If I ever have a car crash, I'm just going to run my hand down the window. Maybe possibly rub it on my body, get some blood on there, and then rub it down the window. Because that's what everyone seems to do. I don't know, maybe it's like a healing power of glass or something. But then they started with the old intro. Yep. Or bits of the old intro. There was a lot missing from that intro. And I don't recall ever seeing Skinner in the intro either. But I kind of like it.
Well, I think he's going to play an important role in these handful, because it's only the 6 episodes. It seems to, but even in the short, I'd say season and a half to 2 seasons, which were largely Monster of the Weekish, right away people were criticizing throwaway, wasted episodes, silliness of, this particular monster is absurd, or that, it was right after Lost had come out. Actually, right after Lost had ended, I should say.
Yeah, people were trying to fill that hole, weren't they?
Right, and what Lost had brought, which was one of its good and bad elements, was that serial element. And to have the Monster of the Week thing was refreshing, because people always said with Lost, you couldn't jump into it partway through. You missed too much. You didn't know the story. With this Monster of the Weakness, it was refreshing to enjoy a show and be able to watch. You miss a week or two, no big deal. You didn't have to go watch 6 episodes on the DVR first before you could watch the current episode. But then a lot of people didn't like that too. There was still that craving for an extended story. And I did get the sense from what I had heard about the X-Files when it was on originally that there was a Monster of the Week element and numerous attempts, it seemed, to bring in an underlying mythology. And one of the criticisms I remember hearing back then was to pick one. Like that it seemed to go one route, and like the character with the cigarette at the end of this episode, I'm familiar with him because I know he's a pivotal character in that conspiracy mythology of the original 9 seasons.
Oh God, yes, yeah. Well,
But I believe there were a number of other elements that were just. It sounded like it tried to go a lot of different paths, trying to find something that people would latch onto, and but that's not why I didn't watch it originally. I'm not a fan of Duchovny or Anderson. I don't care for either of them, and it might be the characters they play, but they both rub me the wrong way. I can't root for them.
Right. Okay. Oh, that's a shame.
Well, I don't know what it would be. What did I had seen as we were getting ready for this podcast. For some reason, I ended up catching a glimpse of the original X-Files pilot and how young Duchovny looked, and it must have been 1990. He had that yuppie late 80s, 90s kind of look.
Yeah.
I mean, he looks so weathered now, but now he looks almost like he's trying to be. Well, I guess that's part of what his character has supposedly gone through, but I don't know. I just can't. I don't like him. I find Anderson just so snarky.
Is there anything else I should be mentioning before I get slated by my co-hosts? I don't think so. I hope not anyway. Otherwise I'm going to get a kick in the balls by someone. But yeah, I've been doing that in the meantime, and I saw that the X-Files was coming back. They got the band back together, so I decided, hey, why not get the band back together and do a rethinking thing on it? And it's only 6 episodes, so I don't think there's anything to lose in this.
No, and I think, and we'll talk about it more in a few minutes, I'm sure, but I think it's made more for me than it is for you, in the sense that although I'm familiar with X-Files, I've probably watched a portion of some of the movies and a portion of a handful of episodes. It's not a series I've seen. I've not seen the first 9 seasons. I know as much about it as as anyone who hasn't seen the show, but not as much as the people who have. I don't know if that came across clearly. I know
No,
who's who somewhat.
it's come across perfectly because I think, I don't know, I don't know it that well. That's the thing. I've watched it. I started watching it when it was on Sky One over in England, and it was a show that I watched, enjoyed, and forgot about because it just seemed to me like the monster of the week. I didn't really notice the mythology that was flowing all the way through it. I think up until the first movie came out, then I realised, hang on, there's a bit more aliens in this, isn't there? And then the movie came out, enjoyed that, but then kind of went off the boil and found the pub. So
Now, did you like the monster of the week element of it?
the monster of the week element, I think I enjoyed it, but sometimes they could be a bit weak, and so that would turn me off of it. And so I'd be, okay, there's more monster of the week coming than mythology, so I just ended up not watching it and gradually slipping out of it. And I don't remember what season I stopped watching it in, but then again, I don't remember what season I started watching it either.
See, now the television show Fringe began very much monster of the week, and they tried to throw, there's a common element to these incidents, and we will sort of kind of go into it, investigate it. But over the course of its 5-year run, they pretty much abandoned the monster of the week and went pure mythology, pure conspiracy connection. What is this driving force behind these? And when they were doing it, Fringe happens to be one of the shows I very, very much enjoyed all the time, and unpleasant, and maybe there are moments that I just haven't seen her where she's warm and fuzzy, but there's a series where she's a detective, a European detective, tracking down like a serial killer. I think it's in England.
Isn't that called The Fall or something?
Something like, yeah, it's a one-word title like that. And she has that same, just for lack of a better word, unpleasant, cold demeanor. And then Duchovny's been in, there was something on here about Los Angeles policemen during the era of race riots, and with Manson, with Charlie Manson.
Right.
And he plays a troubled policeman. And just, I don't know, I'm not, he's never been one of those actors that I enjoy, as opposed to like Pierce Brosnan. Hey, Pierce Brosnan can do no wrong for me. I'll watch this crappy Pierce Brosnan movie just because he'll always be Remington Steele, and he'll always be just cool and smooth. And
oh, geez, I'd rather take
there's my
David
guy.
Duchovny any day.
Oh, I'm sure. But no, it's just I don't know. Neither one of them are actors that like I sit and, oh, he's in the show, I'll have to go watch. Have to go see that other movie just because they're in it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I suppose you kind of covered my next question. Is it was going to be, what were your initial thoughts on this episode? Bearing in mind that you're coming into it from kind of, I suppose we are both freshman people going into it, and they had to set their stall out in a way that they would create new openings for new people to come in and watch this. Even die-hard X-Files watchers needed to be reintroduced to the new way that they're going to be doing it. So how did that affect you? Did you enjoy the way that they did that or not?
Well, I found it fine. There was the long, maybe 3 or 4 minute narrative where Mulder's kind of bringing everybody up to speed. That worked for me. It was fine. It was all I needed. I've heard a lot of criticism of that. I guess a lot of diehard people didn't want it, but I didn't have an issue with it, especially as the Roswell scenes seem to kind of have some greater significance later on in the episode.
See, I think the diehard people that didn't like it poorly judged it, because you've got people like my son, we sat down and watched it,
Mm-hmm.
and he enjoyed it.
You needed that.
But
if you weren't familiar.
Hello everyone, and welcome to Rethinking The X-Files. I'm Elton McManus, and this is the podcast where we talk about the X-Files from the new season, Season 10. Joining me is a man that I've spoken to many, many times, but not for a long time.
Yes.
And he is Scott Copperman. Hello, Scott.
Hello, everybody. It's nice to be back in the rethinking sphere, rethinking more television.
Too right, yes. I've missed this.
Yes.
I've missed really diving into a TV program. It's been a long, long time that I've actually sat down and torn apart a TV show.
I agree, and it's been the same for me. But I think, in a way, it's almost been movies have kind of taken center stage for part of the interim. I know it's been a while since we've done it, but Star Wars, Star Trek. There were a lot of big things. It's kind of taking a swing back now that Star Wars movies come out. Now I think we're going back to TV for a while. There'll be some new productions, things like this.
Yeah, definitely. Well, just to introduce people to us, do you want to say how we met? Across a
sure.
Open room, candlelit,
yes,
all that nonsense.
Well, we met a long time ago through the Simply Syndicated online community and decided to start the Apotheosis of a Bombast podcast, which is still out there at bombastpodcast.podbean.com and on iTunes. We did that for, I believe it was 3 years.
Yeah, something like that.
Then we also had an affinity for Lost. We produced the Rethinking Lost podcast together, which I think that was through the last 2 seasons of Lost, maybe 2.5. I think we started in the summer prior to the last 2. And we also did a number of things together with other Lost podcasters and appeared on different shows. And unfortunately, factors offline just made it harder for us to get together, mostly issues with my schedule. But I've been watching from a distance as you've been producing the Shonky Lab episodes, and I ship in my 2 cents via Twitter and Facebook and all every 6 weeks or so. But hopefully this could be the start of something more current and more frequent.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Well, like you say, I've been doing the Shonky Lab and the Black Dog podcast and the Witlist for the Defense podcast. And